All right, so doing some sorting of the stock low pressure fuel pump and how things work in the tank. Here is an A4 fuel pump, which should be similar if not identical to what's in my RS4, at least with the flow path, maybe not the capacity, but I'm not sure. These pumps are typical or standard in a lot of ways. So it's got an inlet, which it pulls through the screen. It's got an outlet, which pumps fuel up to the engine, to the direct injection high pressure fuel pumps. But it's got a couple unique features. So it's got this other port here at the bottom, and it's got this smaller barb at the top. There's some information out there about the smaller barb at the top, so it connects to the small line. All this is in the right side of the tank. And this guy connects to a hose that goes over to the left side of the tank. And he's connected to what's called a suction pump. Suction pump is something that looks like this, but it relies on the flow of fuel through here to generate a vacuum and then pump the extra fuel from the left side of the tank over to the right. So essentially it's a transfer pump. So I was pretty confident in the function of this or the purpose of this barb, but what I wasn't sure about is this guy. So this guy, this thing plugs into here, to the bottom of the pump. So it sits like that, and this sits in the basket. And you can see this round opening sits over top of that orange one-way valve. So that one orange-way valve has openings at the bottom of the basket, and what goes on there is fuel is also pumped out of this small hole. And when the fuel is pumped out of that, it goes, let's see if I can use this. It pumps into here. This is blocked off. So then the fuel has to turn around essentially and go this direction. So this little jet here kind of funnels down and accelerates the velocity of the fuel. So the fuel is shooting out of that little jet really fast through this larger hole or tube. See, it's pretty big. You can see the small outlet of the jet. And so what that flow path does is it generates vacuum or low pressure zone inside of this cavity. And that low pressure or vacuum pulls open that one-way valve and pulls fuel in from the bottom of the tank through these 5 holes and helps to fill and keep this basket filled with fuel. So I've seen some videos out there where guys just say, remove that valve, toss all this in the trash, it doesn't really matter. When you get low on fuel, you may end up running out of fuel going around a hard corner. But I didn't really want to take that approach on my build. So I will be maintaining or keeping these guys. The challenge there is that in moving to an aftermarket fuel pump, which this guy is a Walbro 525, it has your standard inlet and outlet, but what it doesn't have is these extra outlet ports. So this guy or this guy. So what I'll do is I'll keep this guy, and of course I'll install him in the basket. But he'll be responsible for just sucking fuel from the basket and supplying the engine, and only the engine, with fuel. So this guy will be 100% dedicated to supplying fuel to the engine. And then I'll add a secondary small, they're called a pre-pump often. They're very low pressure, low volume pumps, low current draw. But that guy will also mount in the basket, and he'll supply both this suction pump and this suction pump with fuel flow. So that way, this guy can support all the horsepower that he possibly can to the engine, and the small transfer or pre-pump will support all of the suction pump activity. So keeping the basket full with fuel from the right side of the tank, and pumping and transferring fuel from the left side of the tank to the right side of the tank. So, of course, when I pulled this out, I didn't really know what did what, so I just hooked up these terminals, hooked up a 12-volt power supply, stuck this guy in a small cup of water, and I watched where fuel came out or where fuel sucked in. So I did confirm fuel comes out here, and out here. So that's the plan. I was able to not hack up too bad this housing. This lid is plastic welded to the basket, but I was able to snap those off pretty easily, and it still clips in and out of the basket here. Let's see here. So he's nicely retained. This is more for positioning of the fuel lid assembly. So I think this goes something like, no, I can't remember. Anywho, that's a puzzle. Oh, here we go. There we go. That's how it goes. So that spring pushes the basket to the bottom of the tank all the time, keeps the fuel pump and everything as low as possible. And the factory fuel pump is retained by these 3 tangs or tabs. I bet the Walbro would fit in there because this diameter is very similar to this. The only issue is getting this larger diameter past that. So what I'll probably have to do is I'll have to cut out these 3 tangs, and I'll design and 3D print a new fuel pump carrier for the Walbro pump. I'll also have to print and figure out a way to stick the new small pre-pump in there, or the pre-pump could maybe sit external. So that's to be figured out. But I'm glad I was able to make it this far, and I'm pretty confident I can build a nice fuel system that retains all the stock features, but flows a bunch more fuel and supports a bunch more power. And still should be quiet and inconspicuous. So yeah, hope that's helpful.